understand the concept of love.
Hello everyone, Fightsoul here with another video for KOF 98 UML, which will be my last video for KOF 98 UML. I actually quit about, I think like 2 months ago, right before Diamond anyway, like a couple of weeks before Diamond. Because of family commitments, essentially I have to look after a family member, so I don't really have the time to be logging in at certain hours of the day. I'm not free during most of the day for the kind of gameplay this game requires, basically, to stay competitive. And part of the fun for me in this game is staying competitive. So at that point I decided enough is enough, and it was a good long run of 5 and a bit years. Sadly, this is where it ends. So if you're subscribed to my channel for KOF 98 UML content, I thank you. There won't be any more in the future. The only things that are going to be uploaded to my channel in any near time frame is probably going to be like single player completionist playthroughs of games that I can just pause and play whenever I want. But yeah, let's get into the characters, because I've had quite a few questions about this. We never really expected to get collaborations in global, right? Taiwan had them, and they added a couple of them to the client in global. They added Guilty Gear and Dead or Alive files are in the client, but they chose to never bring them here. And in the end, they brought a collaboration, and they went directly to the latest one. It's literally just finished in Taiwan this very week, which is kind of insane. It's kind of insane for several reasons. I mean, Yumi, for example, as a character, one of the characters in the collab, is incredibly strong already at this point in time over in Taiwan. And in Japan, well, Japan is different because they have a completely different system. In Japan, she was really powerful until Mizuchi got his awakening and he completely destroyed her. And then Ayla came and completely destroyed Mizuchi because he had to spend all his energy healing and blah blah blah. But I recorded a video recently in Taiwan because they were asking me on the Discord, like, what does the meta look like? So I recorded 5 different server top 10s, and I posted images from another that I got online. There's 60 teams overall, 60 teams in top 10, and Yumi and Asuka were like in 75% of top 10 teams, the two of them together. I'd say 90% had one or the other. They are very powerful units. Hikage was in a few. Homura wasn't in any team. 60 teams or 0 Homuras, and I think I understand why. Well, I will explain all of this as we go. When we talk a little bit about in the end about how the event works, it's kind of easy to understand why she got skipped. But anyway, let's start with the free unit of the collaboration, Hikage, who is very strong, as a matter of fact, for a free unit. And if you're in a newer server, or if you have any old holdover characters, she will be an amazing replacement. So all of the ninjas belong to the Another World group, like Samurai Shodown characters do. What this means is basically they're going to get affected by certain effects. If you look at Wither Fightsoul, level 3 and 5 have extra effects against Another World fighters. Verse, for example, has a few extra effects against Another World fighters. So these are things you're going to want to keep in mind, both in arena and when you're playing Ultimate Battle and such, because all of a sudden Verse might be doing something extra that he wasn't doing before, and that is why. So keep that in mind. He's a gang, API 15, Snake Soul with Tiger effects, which is one of my favourite combinations for damage leaning characters, Earth Shaking Badge, Street Fighting Tone, normal third passive, except they have an extra line that says something like all her damage is not affected by control free or something like that. I can't really remember, but it's something like that. All of the new ones have it, so I'm not going to really repeat this, but you can check it out in the client. Her fates are pretty standard. Her gates are really easy, thankfully, but for her being the free character, they don't require any of the other collaboration members, which is good. And let's move on into her kit, the meat of the subject. So her late gate increases her own control and crit rate, increases her own damage and res rates by 40%, and her ult res and ult damage by 60%. Pretty hefty buffs. When deployed, she gains 9 daggers, and she gains an extra dagger every time she crits. Every round she refreshes the small skills. What this means is that every round she's going to have a small skill essentially. I don't know why it's refresh, it's a weird choice of word they use in Taiwan, and all of your attacks ignore damage reflection, so she's not going to get fucked by reflect, which is also nice. When your round starts, she absorbs all her own rage, with each 1 point of rage converting to 0.04 damage and res rate for 1 round. And every 150 points of rage converts to a dagger, so she can get up to a maximum of 6 extra daggers from this each turn, if she has full rage. And if you absorb more than 800 rage, you remove all your negative effects. At the end of our round, if cumulatively you've used 12 or more daggers, then you will chase with your ult, limited to once per round. When deployed, she increases her own dodge rate by 35% for 2 rounds, which can't be dispelled. Now, this is one of the cruxes of this collaboration, one of the most important things, one of the central points. Dodge is a new mechanic, and the best way to describe it is that it's essentially the big brother of resist, like Psyche and Ignis have, and Cooler, etc., old Cooler. What it does is that when it triggers, they will receive 0 damage from that attack. They can still be hit by the effects of that attack, so for example, if Shermie hits Hikage with skill, and Hikage procs this 35% rate, then Hikage would take 0 damage, but she could still be hit by the Paralyze and the Ionize both, for example. So you can still be hit by effects, but you will not be hit by the damage itself. And after each successful dodge, there's a 30% chance to escape, run away like your Ignis does, for example. After each attack that you fail to dodge, you increase your dodge rate by 3%, stacked with other similar buffs, and after you dodge, it resets back to 0. If a hit causes your own HP to be lower than 5%, you increase your dodge rate to 100% and escape straight away after the dodge. Recover your HP by 80% or rage, and you get 6 more daggers. You can activate this effect 1 to 3 times per battle. The more enemies when deployed, the more chances, and you can't die until you have exhausted all chances. So similar to how Rob 13's passive works, his Undying works, and it's gonna trigger 3 times in arena basically. So it's pretty strong. It's a pretty strong passive. It's actually quite interesting because it introduces quite a few new things. You know, she's got the dagger mechanic, which is new. She absorbs her own rage rather than using it to power her ult, which is also new and interesting. But it's quite a strong passive because, you know, she's going to get a lot of control and crit from her passive. She gets a decent amount of damage and res, and she gets a high amount of ult and ult damage, ult res and ult damage. So yeah, she's very interesting, rather strong passive for the character, and it sets up really well what she does, right? So we're going to go into a skill now, which is where we start making use of all of these daggers, and we will see what she can do with them. So she attacks a column with a skill, permanently increases small skill damage and ult damage by 20%. Each dagger consumed will additionally increase this by 1%, up to 60%, cannot be dispelled, so she's going to get another fairly hefty buff to skill damage and ult damage. She recovers 300 rage, which is great to power for her absorption. She absorbs 10% max HP from each of the targets, and when she has at least 6 daggers, she consumes 6 daggers, and there's an 80% chance to deal additional damage to each target equal to 55% of her own attack, and also inflict snake poison, which is a damage over time effect that does not restore rage and reduces their res rate by 20%. If the target is already afflicted by a burning effect, there's a 70% chance to upgrade the skill and deal additional damage to those targets equal to 80% of your own attack, and you change the burning to Red Lotus Snake Poison, which is damage over time, does not restore rage, and reduces 40% res rate instead. If it's already afflicted by the Red Lotus Fire Burns, then Red Lotus Snake Poison is guaranteed, instead of being a 70%. When applying Snake Poison and Red Lotus Snake Poison, it's affected by your control rate, so it's not like a normal burn or a normal poison effect, which are normally just applied automatically. This takes into account your control versus a control free, as if it was a normal CC effect. And only the number of layers can be stacked, you can't stack the buff. Can't be dispelled, lasts for 2 rounds. If you still have at least 6 daggers after all of this, you immediately chase with your small skill. But technically, she can use skill up to 3 times per round, which is pretty cool in my opinion. Because we never got Luong, who could chase with small skill. And it's actually quite funny that Hikage doesn't even chase anybody else's skill, she just chases her own. So you can see down here the damage for her poisons, 50% of attack for her snake poison, and 100% of attack for her Red Lotus snake poison, so pretty decent damage. And finally we move on to her Smax, which attacks a column, priority to targets affected by snake poison or Red Lotus snake poison. If in this round she's consumed at least 18 daggers, deal 40% splash damage without restoring rage, and reduce the target's healing rate by 35% for 2 rounds. She increases her own crit rate by 15%, each dagger she uses will increase this by 5% and resets the dagger consumption count, and it increases her own dodge rate by 45%, attack and defense by 35%, and your crit power by 25% for 2 rounds. That's a pretty hefty dodge bonus that she gets here with her Smax. 45% is really high, right? It's going to put her normally around the 50% mark with the other buffs from a passive, and for the first couple of rounds she's going to get up to 80% even. And she also increases her crit power by 25%, which is really nice for ganks, because normally ganks, when they have high crit rate, don't make the best use of it because they have very low crit power normally by design. You have characters like Yumi who can transform a crit rate into crit power, or like Mai who can transform it into healing and stuff like that. But unless they have something like that, then you don't really care that much for crit on your ganks. However, she's got a nice little bonus to crit power, which makes it very nice for her passive, which already increases her crit, and all her other effects that also increase crit. She's a very crit based character. She adds 1 stack of Red Lotus snake poison to the main target. Continuous damage without restoring rate, reduces 40% res rate as we read earlier. Lasts for 2 rounds, ignores control free, cannot be dispelled. And the first ult in each round gains another 9 daggers. If the target is in effect of snake poison or Red Lotus snake poison when you hit him, deal additional damage equal to the number of poison stacks times 100% your own attack. So if they were to have, for example, 3 poison stacks, you deal 300% of your own attack, which is pretty severe. And if they are afflicted by snake poison, or number of poison stacks times 150% of your own attack if afflicted by Red Lotus snake poison. If it's already afflicted by Red Lotus snake poison, this attack ignores block and res rate, which is a really strong effect. If there's no ally in front of you, she gains a stack of septic resistance, which is nice when the tank dies or if she's in the front line, and an additional 8% dodge, which is really nice, and 1 dagger for 1 round. Can be stacked, can't be dispelled. If there's no ally in front of you, you gain 3 extra daggers, which is also really nice. So for 1 round, when rage reduced, gain 300 rage, only once. For 2 rounds, the most damage you can take in a single attack is 55% max HP, so she gets a damage limitation effect, which is really powerful when you combine it with dodge. So as you can imagine, she's actually really strong for a free character. She's got a lot of very strong and powerful effects, and I think if she was in a limited draw, say around Orochi Yumi or a little bit before that, she would be a top tier unit in a limited draw to spend diamonds on. And the fact that she's now coming for free and is still going to be a really strong unit for many teams in global is really, really good, because I think you can get both her weapons for free if you keep on top of the event. In terms of runes, I think she benefits the most from probably Dragon Tiger. If you can make her ult round 1 Wolves. You could go Gods or Killing if you can make her ult round 1 for extra crit, but I think it's a little bit overkill. She gets a lot of base crit and she gets more crit from her ult, and you know, I think you're going to lose out on a lot of damage if you focus that much on crit. I think you're better off if you can using Dragon Tiger runes or Wolves if you're making her ult round 1, and instead trying to get the crit in things like the chips or the 6th rune or the core or wherever else you can get it, just to supplement a little bit. But I think she will do a lot better with Dragon Tiger or Wolves. in terms of Fightsoul. So Wolf should work on her, because even though you don't take damage from the dodge effects, you still receive the effect. So the same way that you receive the paralyze and such, you should still be able to apply the effects of Wolf. So that might work if you have that. I think personally she's an ideal candidate for something like, for example, Wither, because both her skill and her ult attack are columns, so you can apply that effect, and she has chases, which is more chances to apply that effect and to spread it to other people, right? So that's really nice. In terms of chips, so for chips, you're probably going to hear me here the same thing for most of the collab. I actually really like Scorpion for 3 of the 4 ninjas, because the dodge mechanic helps them avoid damage, and they're gonna be, and most of the damage they'll take will be incidental, like smaller damages and such. And what that means is that being able to drain that HP back is really good. They also all have either multi-target effects, multi-target attacks, or they have single target with splash attacks, so it's really easy to trigger the marks as well. Python works because Python works with everyone. The buff itself can be dispelled, but it's still a really strong buff. I think slugs will only work on one of the characters, which we'll get to later. Yeah, so overall a really strong character. I'm really surprised how strong she is for a free character, and I think she can slot into a lot of teams in global. There's a lot of people running subpar DPS at this point, right? She could easily replace a Terry or replace a Jeese or someone similar to that. She might even be able to replace Chris with Smax, as a matter of fact. I'm not playing the game now, so I can't really tell what damages most people are doing with Chris, but I feel like she is going to do so much more for the team overall. So yeah, that's Hikage. Hope this helps. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put timestamps down below, but basically I'm going to record all 4 characters in one video, because I need to take advantage of the time I have free right now, because I'm not going to be able to come back and re-record this later again. So I'm going to do all 4 characters in one video, and then I'll put timestamps down below so you can check the sections of the character in particular that you're looking at, in case you don't want to look at Homura or Asuka or Hikage or whatever, right? So yeah, I'll do that, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Okay, so on to the second girl of the collab, the forgotten girl, Homura. She's the one that really doesn't see much play from what I've seen. Again, as we mentioned with Hikage, another world, so it gets the extra effects from the Wither Fightsoul and from Verse, etc. She's a gank again, aptitude 15, she's a bear and a turtle. Flame badge, scorching tone, normal passive with that thing about ignoring control free for damage or whatever. Pretty normal fates, though they start asking for all the collab characters, as you can see. And because she's one of the pay units, she's got Hikage included in her fates. So, the Lake increases her own crit and damage, and she gives 20% of that amount to other Senran Kagura allies. That's pretty nice. Increases her own attack and defense by 40%, and her pierce rate and ult damage by 50%. Also very good. The first round when deployed, she increases her res and small skill res rates by 70%, and must release small skill. And after the second round of being deployed, at the start of your turn, she triggers Life Drive. Now, Life Drive is the mechanic that all the paid characters in this collaboration have, which is they basically take their clothes off and remain in bikinis. Okay? Yes, that's the gimmick of this collaboration, because that's what their own games and their anime is like. So permanently lose all your own defense, permanently increase your max HP by 100%, recover full HP, unaffected by healing rate, permanently increase your damage and res by 20%, and your burning rate, rage recovery rate, and dodge rate by 35%. So this is a pretty strong effect, but compared to Asuka, we start seeing a bit of a problem already. You'll see Asuka in a little bit, but increasing your own max HP by 100% is nice, but it's not as powerful an effect as increasing your own attack by 100%. in this game. So it's still very good though, mind you. The best part of this is increasing the dodge rate by 35%. Obviously, that's really, really strong. So if you haven't watched the Hikage part, what dodge does, it means you take 0 damage, but you're still affected by the effects of the attack, right? So say Shermie hits you with skill, you'll be hit by the paralyze, by the ionize, but you will take 0 damage if you trigger the dodge. After the style switch, which means triggering life drive, when the enemy round starts, you share damage with a Senran Kagura ally and a random ally in the back line. 30% for her, 1 round, reduce that shared damage by 85%. This effect stops when your HP is lower than 20%. And every time they share damage, they recover 10% lost HP. When your own HP is lower than 60%, recover 40% max HP. You can trigger this once every ally turn is missing here, and once every enemy turn. When your own dodge rate is less than 50%, you gain 50% anti-crit and 60% block. When dealt fatal damage, won't die, instead she'll remove all her debuffs, recover 80% HP unaffected by healing rate and 800 rage, and increases the res and dodge rates by 60% for 2 rounds. You can activate this 2 times per battle, 3 times if there's another ninja in the battle. Her own crit rate and damage rate starts at 25%, so her passive is actually really strong, it's really good. As utility to share with the other ninjas, she gets bonuses from there being other ninjas in there. She's got some really strong effects with how she increases her own dodge, how her res goes up, how her block goes up, how her anti-crit goes back. She's got very strong healing when she gets hurt. So her passive is actually the shining part of this character. The problem is, in my opinion, she gets let down by what follows. So we're going to look now at her skill, and you can already see that it's got very little text compared to Hikage. So she attacks a column, deals additional damage equal to 20% max HP to the main target, increases her own healing rate by 15%, and your small skill chance for 30% for 2 rounds can be stacked. Cleanses her own negative effects, which is okay, but it's not that nice because if you CC'd, you can't use it, so all you're going to do with this is remove stuff like attack down and such. Adds 1 stack of Red Lotus Fire to target, which is nice if you're running Hikage. Deals burning damage, doesn't restore rage, equal to 4% max HP and lasts for 2 rounds. Recovers 150 rage to herself and 1 Senran Kagura ally, which can be herself, so she can cover 300 rage. And she recovers 40% of her lost HP. But that's a really basic skill. It actually doesn't do that much. Normally with ganks you expect skills to have some particularly strong effects, and in her case she doesn't actually do that much. She's got a little bit of damage increase, a very small heal increase, then increase in skill chance, which is okay, cleanses her own negative effects, which most of the time is going to mean that she's going to remove things like attack down or whatever. Her burning is okay, but it's 4% compared to other characters we've had before that do 8% max HP. Her rage recovery isn't anything crazy, and the heal is very nice. That one is nice. But it's actually a fairly mediocre skill in my opinion. I expected a lot more. So moving on to her Smax, she attacks a row, deals additional damage equal to 200% attack to the enemy with the lowest HP in the row. Increases the damage and res by 35% and alt res by 50% for 2 rounds. Reduces the target control free by 30% for 2 rounds, ignoring control free. This ult will attack the front row and back row in alternating fashion, so she'll start with the front, then she'll go to the back, then she'll go to the front, then she'll go to the back. She adds a stack of Red Lotus Fire to the targets, deals burning damage equal to 10% of max HP, this is a lot nicer. Doesn't restore rage and lasts for 2 rounds. Deals additional damage to targets equal to 25% current HP. Each Senran Kagura ally increases this by 5%, and this attack ignores the enemy's reflect rate, so similar to what Hikage had, but instead of all her attacks, just the Smax. If the enemies have poison, burns or bleeding effects, each of those effects boosts this attack ult damage by 10%, and damage power by 2%, and will increase your own dodge rate by 3% for 2 rounds and can be stacked with other similar buffs. If after this buff there's less than 3 enemies with burning effects, you randomly add a stack of Red Lotus Fire to 2 enemies without burns. For 1 round, when attacked by enemies and your HP is lower than 60%, immediately switch to Smax to counterattack, priority to targets without Red Lotus fire, deal additional damage equal to 20% max HP, adds 1 stack of Red Lotus fire for 2 rounds, ignoring control free, doesn't restore rage, and recovers 25% of her lost HP. Each enemy with Red Lotus fire increases the value by 10%. You can activate this once per round. So her S-Max is solid, but it's nothing insane. Counter S-Maxes need to be really good for them to be good. Hers is decent. The fact that it still attacks a row according to this is the best part about it, so she's going to have fairly good damage. But honestly, for a paid character, compared to Hikage who is free, I don't think it's enough. I really don't. I think she's got a little bit too many generic buffs and not enough concentrated stuff. I think she needed a little bit more in her S-Max, to be honest, for her to be on par with the next 2 characters who are going to be Asuka and Yumi, which is what everyone runs for a reason, right? So basically, she's a very solid character, but her skill is like really mediocre, and her S-Max is probably a 7 out of 10, something like that. It's not gonna really be game changing, considering the fact that you have to spend like 50k to get 2 weapons, right? For most people anyway. In terms of runes, again, she boosts her own crit rate quite a bit, so you probably want to put something like hits 3 targets, so yeah, Dragon Tiger, or in her case Waltz, because she ults round 1. There is a consideration to using Dragon Tiger because she does do that extra damage to the person with the lowest HP, but I think overall it's just easier if you go Waltz. If you really want to min-max, try to go Dragon Tiger and fix your ult order, so she will be ulting mostly even rounds after round 1. In terms of Fightsoul, again, she's very good for Wither. She obviously can use Kusanagi Fightsoul really well with her burns. She has a multi-ult, multi-target attack and skill, so things like Wither, like Kusanagi fit very well on her. And Yielding would probably be good on her. What else? You might want, if you're going to run her defensively, you might want to look at putting Guardian on her, because one of her main issues is that even though she seems to be defensively focused, she doesn't really have any damage limitations, unlike Hikage gets with her S-Max, right, that 55%. So she can be burst down in a single attack if they catch her with her pants down. So yeah, it's probably one of those. In terms of chips, again, for characters, like for the ninjas, I really like Scorpion. Python works well. I wouldn't run Slug on her personally. Yeah, so she's a little bit the forgotten child because she's good but not great, and you have to pay for her. She comes in two lucky draws, so you're going to get her in bar, which is not a cheap way to get her, and you get very limited benefits from it. So it's kind of like trapped between a sword and a hard place, the sword being Asuka and the hard place being Yumi, which we're about to go into now, and you will see kind of why, right? So that's Homura. I really wouldn't recommend spending on her unless you're really flush, because you really, if you're gonna get paid characters, you want to get Asuka or Yumi, and we will see why in a little bit. Okay. And now we come to Asuka, who is going to be the premium DPS for quite a while, unless Global does something crazy, because I haven't seen a better one yet in China or Taiwan. She decimated Yuri on release. Yuri, there was 37 in the top 40 teams across 4 different servers and 4 top 10s. And when Senran Kagura came, and I looked at 6 different servers, pardon me, there was only like 8 or 9 Yuris left, because that's how insane this character is in terms of damage. Now, to set the scene, Asuka is one of those super selfish characters. She's going to contribute 0 utility to the team. She's going to have 0 support for her teammates. But what she is going to have is a fucking shit ton of damage. Okay? So let's get into her and we will see why. So she belongs to another world fighter group, like we mentioned before. She's going to be hit by those extra effects from with a Fightsoul and Verse, for example, stuff like that. She's a tiger with a soul with snake effects, which is really good. It's one of the better ways to earn rage. Said earlier, one of my favorite combinations. Gale badge, mana tone, pretty standard for fates compared to the other characters. And she's also got Hikage, the free unit in her gates, because all the pay ones have Hikage in there. So let's start with her lake. She increases her ult damage for herself and all Senran Kagura allies, and she herself gets 20% of the extra of that amount. So she doesn't give a portion of the ult damage. She's like Mr. Karate, right? If you remember, he has that passive that increases damage for all karate characters. That's what she does, and she herself then gets an extra 20% because, you know, increases her own damage, res, ult res, and crit rate by 45%. That's a pretty nutty passive for a DPS. When she's deployed, gains 33% dodge rate, triple this amount for the first round. This triple effect disappears after 6 successful dodges, and she recovers 200 rage for each Senran Kagura ally. During the first round, when deployed, must release small skills and becomes immune to crowd control during that round. During the fight, every successful dodge will recover 25% lost HP and 150 rage. Plus, you will get 2 stacks of double sword charge, up to a maximum of 20 stacks. Each stack gives her 4% attack, 4% ult res, small skill res, and small skill chance by 3%, and her damage by 1%. When ally round starts, if double sword charge reaches 10 stacks, you will remove all her negative effects, remove all her clothes, and trigger life drive. Permanently lose all defense, increases her attack by 100%, recovers 500 rage, and permanently increases her dodge rate by 33%. Your control free will go up by 70%, and your rage recovery speed by 15%, and she will be permanently immune to rage reduction. All of her attacks are unaffected by the de-energizing effect, which we currently don't have in global, I believe. I think that's the Mary Rose effect, which is from the Dead or Alive collab. At the start of your enemy rounds, recover lost HP equal to 40% plus 70% for each Senran Kagura ally you have. When dealt fatal damage, won't die. Instead, she will remove all her negative effects, recover 75% max HP, 600 rage, increase her dodge rate by 66%, which can be stacked with similar buffs, and this will reduce by 22% after each successful dodge and lasts up to 2 turns. This undying effect can be triggered up to 3 times. So, this is a DPS. As a DPS, sacrificing all your defense means jack shit, because you don't do nothing with that defense, and it doesn't really protect you from much. You don't have enough defense for it to really be relevant. And in exchange for sacrificing that defense, she gets 100% attack, she recovers rage, she pumps her dodge up to 66% because she already has 33 base, and her control free goes through the roof, she gets more rage recovery speed, and she becomes immune to rage reduction, which is a DPS's worst nightmare. That's an incredible bloody passive. And on top of that, she increases damage for every Senran Kagura character you ult, for her ult damage, and it starts at 40% for her. That's such a massive buff for a DPS. It's like being able to dodge 2/3 of attacks that come your way and take 0 damage from them, when she has as much healing as she does, and every time she dodges an attack, she's gonna heal and gain rage and gain stacks of a double sword charge thing, which is going to give her more attack and more resistance and more skill chance and more damage. It's such a nutty passive. They went so hard on that. It's stupid. As you can see, the only support she has for Senran Kagura is for Senran Kagura Charles, and it's only that give them ult damage. That's all the support you're going to see from her for the entire tier of the kit. That is it. Let's go into a skill which is short and to the point, and that's exactly what it wants to do, which is attacks a single enemy, dealing 100% splash damage to target in the back row. and 100% additional damage to a random enemy from the rest in the team. Deals additional damage equal to 20% max HP and recovers 30% HP and 400 rage. If the attack hits an enemy afflicted with Sword Scar, then deal additional 30% damage to them and reduce the rage by 300%. He gains a stack of double sword charge, and if you already have max stacks, gain 15% damage res rate instead, which lasts for 2 rounds and can't be dispelled. So, what does this skill do? A shit ton of damage. That's about it, right? That's all this character wants to do. She does basically full damage to 3 different characters. She heals up, she gains a ton of rage, and she might rage reduce and do extra damage. All she does. It's a very simple skill similar to Homura, but in this case, it's all working in the same direction, where she just wants to do a shit ton of damage, and that's all her kit is gonna do. And now we get to her Smax, where I had a little bit of a conversation with Shahai in the Discord, the man who does the translations for us, bless him. Bless him for doing these full translations at the speed that he did, and better than any translation that Global has ever done. Her Smax is strange in the sense that normally Smaxes add new effects and stuff like that, but for her really it's just numbers increases and a few small changes. The thing is, the number increases for her snowballs so hard because of this change. Attack a single enemy, dealing 40% splash damage to the rest of enemies. So she goes from hitting all enemies for 180% base of her attack, right? The way ults work, the way ult damage is calculated is they base it off of your attack. So if you see, for example, if you have 1 million power and you see 180% base damage on it, that means base damage is going to be 1.8 million, right? Before including other buffs and all that stuff and defense and everything else that comes into the equation. So instead of that, instead of doing this to all enemies, it changes to 450% base with 40% splash to the rest of enemies. The scaling also goes up a lot. Cheeto doesn't have it here, but this is 180% and it gains 0.1% per level, versus this one gains 0.5% per level. So when you do that, it does so much more damage to a single target that the splash damage makes it so that everything, all the numbers just go up massively. The less targets there is, she does more damage, and on top of that, right, you're going to see in a minute, she does extra damage to males, which means everything scales even further. So let's look at the rest of the Smax, but keep in mind that just because its number increases and it changes to attack a single enemy, it doesn't mean skippable Smax. The increase in damage is massive, okay? You have to see it to believe it. Everyone in Taiwan that runs it has their Smax for that reason. So anyway, her Smax attacks a single down enemy, dealing 40% splash damage to the rest of the enemies. The less targets, the higher the damage, up to 180% increase. Increases 35% attack and defense and 50% pierce rate for 2 rounds. She gains 4 stacks of double sword charge. If she reaches max stacks, then switch the effect to increase 10% damage for this attack, with each stack additionally increasing 3% crit and 1.5% damage rate attack. Deals additional damage equal to your attack times 15% times stacks of double sword to 3 random targets. If after this attack your own HP is lower than 30%, increase your dodge rate by 20% for 1 round, can't be dispelled, and recover 40% of your lost HP. Add Sword Scar to target's hit, deals 150% of her own attack, plus on own dodge rate. Bleeding damage without restoring rage, which lasts for 2 rounds. She adds Septic to male targets, equal to 25% of the total damage dealt. Direct damage plus additional damage. And reduces the small skill chance by 40% for 1 round, ignoring control free. Deals additional damage to male targets, equal to 400% attack, and reduces the res rate by 40% for 1 attack, 1 round, ignoring control free. She adds an additional stack of Sword Scar to male targets and reduces the ult damage by 40% per round, ignoring control free. And after switching styles, if the main target is a male, they get silenced for 1 round guaranteed, ignoring control free. Obviously, she's a man hater. That's number one. She obviously doesn't want men in the arena, getting them all out of here, put all the ninjas with the big boobs. That's all she cares about. But this is essentially the highest ult damage, the highest damage ult that we have seen. She's similar to Angel in a way that she has that bleed that she adds, right? Every time she hits someone, she has incredible single target damage, which then she splashes, but then she also does to another 3 extra enemies. She has a shit ton of damage. We were seeing her hit Ignis the other day in some videos, and Ignis has damage limitation, right? And she was still going over 43 and 45 million damage, despite him having like whatever his damage limitation is, which means the splash gets smaller, right? It's a massive increase in DPS her Smax is, and as you can see, no utility really other than debuffs. It's all about damage, and surprisingly, survivability. She has a shit ton of survivability. She has 66% dodge once she takes her clothes off. Yeah. If she has low HP, she gets an extra 20%, which put her at 80% dodge. So if she hits someone with reflect, for example, she's going and she goes low, she's gonna increase her dodge rate up to 86%, and she's gonna heal 40% of the HP that she's missing. She just has so many incredibly strong effects that all the number increases in her Smax and her switch to single target damage just makes it go insane in terms of damage, and I don't think anybody can come close to compare, honestly. Her normal ult already does a ton of damage, and this just goes through the roof. It absolutely goes through the roof. It's kind of crazy. She's gonna end up, if you have her at level 139, her Smax, it's gonna be something like what? An extra 50% plus an extra 19, so 69%. So she's gonna end up at something like 519% base damage from her attack. That's not counting the fact that she's gonna have an extra 100% from this and all the increases she gets here. So in terms of damage, if you're looking for a damage dealer, you're not going to be able to top Asuka anytime soon, unless Global brings a global exclusive character or does something really weird, because none of the characters currently released stand up to the level of damage she has. Yeah, so this is one of the reasons why Homura isn't looked at, because Asuka comes in the limited draw, and as such, you've got to spend quite a lot of diamonds to S-Max her. So, in terms of Fightsouls, she's obviously the perfect candidate for Storm, because she has so much additional damage that even if she gets hit by Sword Seal, it doesn't really matter. She's still going to have all these additional damage attacks, and if she hits a male, it's 400% attack. God bless anybody who's still running Psyche frontline if they get hit by that attack. So her ideal fight soul is definitely Storm, in my opinion. You can pretty much run any offensive fight soul on her, but that's the premium one. I wouldn't run defensive fight soul on her. I don't think she needs it. She has such high dodge base. There's so much healing that I really don't think you want to try and boost the survivability. What you want to do is boost her as high as you can so you can kill the enemy before he can kill you, essentially, right? Because when you see Yumi, you'll see Yumi's a character that wants to stall, for example, and Global is a very defensive meta, so Asuka should be there to carry the damage in your team, and she is perfect at that. In terms of chips, again, Scorpion are my favorite. I really like the HP drain, I really like the mark extra damage. Python works really well on her because, you know, 30% attack or 20% attack and res or whatever it is. It's also a really good buff. In terms of runes, he ults round 1 if you have any other Senran Kagura characters, I think. Or it might be you need 2 others, I'm not entirely sure. But at the end of the day, if she ults round 1 for you, you run Wolves round 1. And if she ults round 2 for you, you run Dragon Tiger. She can use any offensive runes, but I think if you want to maximize her damage, those two are going to be the best due to her splash right? And even before she gets a splash, she has full team AoE, so you want basically the AoE runes. Yeah, so pretty much she's just gonna be, if you put her in your team, you're looking to run her and train her as much as possible, right? She's gonna be in this upcoming meta in the next few months. She's gonna be your main damage carry. There's no similar character. You could go for Yuri, but I think you're gonna find that Yuri's gonna get kinda rolled in the new meta because of Asuka existing. Her damage is so stupidly absurd. As much, probably considerably more than Yuri if she's hitting males. And on top of that, she has such high survivability, which is Yuri's main issue, right? Yuri's main issue always was, and the reason we thought he wasn't going to be a long-term character, was that he dies easily. He doesn't have enough undyings, he doesn't have enough protection. And the only reason he lasted as long as he did is because they didn't really release any other DPS after him. You got Shune, and Shune was fucking beastly for a little while after he released, but then they released like 4 characters in a row that fucked with Septic, which essentially destroyed Shune. So yeah, Storm Fightsoul, I'd say Dragon Tiger runes, or if she ults round 1 for you, you run Wolves. Scorpion Chips, if you don't have Storm Soul, try putting another offensive soul in her, whether it's War God, whether it's Unyielding, maybe even Wolf if you don't have anything else to put on her. Basically try to boost the amount of damage she's going to do as much as possible, right? And that's pretty much about it. If you get this character, congratulations, when you're S-Maxer, you're going to have the best DPS in the game for a while, I think. So moving on to Yumi next, so I'll see you guys in that one. Okay, and here we are, the last character of the collaboration, and what most people might say is the best character in the collaboration, because she has a bloody incredible mechanic, and Asuka just can't kill her fast enough if you protect her well enough to stop her going off. So Yumi is a tank, and she also has the dodge mechanic. You can imagine how stupidly overpowered that can be on its own. But she also has several other mechanics that might make you go, what the actual fuck? And we're going to go through them right now. So, as with all the ninjas, belongs to another world group, so Wither is going to have extra effects against her, as will Verse. You want to consider, specifically for her, running Wither on a character that has AoE attack, so that they don't get fucked by Intimidate. Because one of the ways to protect her is having a character with Intimidate to draw attacks away from her. So ideally having it on someone like Mai, or someone who has splash damage or stuff like that, that's going to hit her for sure, and will allow you to evade that Intimidate effect, is ideal. His Turtle Soul with Snake effects gains a lot of rage when attacked and extra rage when attacking. Her Fates and Gates are expensive. She wants all of the collaboration units, both in Gates and in Fates. For this character, Skip Stones. She's the reason Skip Stones exist, right? Because you don't really want to have to get 1 extra or 2 extra paid characters to be able to get her S-Max. This character wants her S-Max. So, if you see any Skip Stones available in the upcoming days, hit them up, boys, because you're going to need them. Unless you're a massive whale and you're going to get all 4 somehow. So, her passive. She increases her own res and block rate base. While other Senran Kagura allies get 20% of this amount, and they get 40% anti-burning, so reduces burning damage. Increase her own attack, defense and res by 40%, control rate by 25%, and alt res and anti-crit by 50%. You and a random Senran Kagura ally become immune to freezing. When deployed, increase your dodge rate to 80%. This value drops by 5% each round down to a minimum of 30% at round 10, 11 probably. The first 2 rounds after being deployed, increase your control free rate by 100% and be immune to rage reduction and must release small skill. When releasing small skills or ult, if your own HP is lower than 20%, you recover 20% of the lost HP. And when our rounds start, reduce the control free rate of all enemies by 5%. This can be stacked, it can't be dispelled, and it lasts until Yumi leaves the battlefield, so she continuously drives down control free. If there are other Senran Kagura allies, you recover 200 rage, similar to how Asuka does. At the start of each round, there's a 40% chance of randomly freezing 2 enemies for 1 round and absorbing 200 rage from them, while also applying dullness to the frozen targets, reducing their attack and damage by 45% for 1 round. So that's a 40% chance to freeze 2 targets at the start of the round and taking rage from them. When the enemy round starts, when the total number of ice marks stacks on the enemies reaches 3 or more, you trigger life drive. As we know, life drive is when she goes bikini mode. So when she triggers life drive, she cleanses her own negative effects, she recovers full HP and rage, she permanently loses all her defense, gains an additional 20% res and control free and 15% rage recovery speed, and 100% freeze effect on all enemies for 1 round. And she changes styles, and when her next round starts, she gains 3 ice reflection chances. When getting hit with fatal damage, she won't die, recovers full HP, removes all her debuffs, and for 1 round, all enemies that attack Yumi receive all the damage that she would have received. And basically, she shares damage with them, so if she would have received 5 million, they will receive 5 million. Up until they're down to 1% HP, then it stops, so it can't kill. And she only gets 1 ice reflection chance in 1v1, and her res rate and block rate increase starts at 55% at level 1. That's a really strong passive already, right? She gets incredible defensive buffs. More than good enough to make up for the fact that eventually she's going to have no defense, because her res and block and anti-crit are just so high, and the fact that she starts with 80% dodge, and basically she's going to be dodging like a mad woman up until like the 6th round, something like that, right? It's going to be at 50% or 40%. It's such a strong effect. And coupled with the fact that she's got healing and she's got rage absorb and she's got CC, she's got because now we're seeing a little bit of freezing here, but you're going to see that she's got a lot more freezing, and it really helps her survivability and makes her last really, really long if you protect her correctly. So moving on to her skill, she attacks a column, covers 250 rage, and permanently increases her own skill, so small skill chance by 35%. So given the fact that she has to do small skill chance for the first 2 rounds, she's going to end up having perma skill after round 3 pretty much. And your control free rate by 30%. You can stack that up to 3 times and it can't be dispelled, so she can get 90% control free from her skill. 60% chance to freeze a target in the back row, and if you're successful, you add a stack of ice mark. You add 1 extra stack of ice mark to a random enemy who already has one, and it does additional damage to targets equal to number of ice mark stacks on all enemies times target's max HP times 3%, which is a nice little additional like AoE bonus damage, because tanks normally don't do a lot of damage with the skills or ults, etc. But when you have things like this, which is max HP and it's based on the amount of stacks, that's actually really nice, because you can do a fairly hefty amount of damage. For a tank anyway, obviously. And then we move on to the piece of her stance, the Smax, which is kind of where everybody went crazy when they first saw it. So attack a single enemy, dealing 60% splash damage to surrounding units. Increases her own damage, res, anti-crit, block rate and anti-crit rate by 35%. As you can see, she doesn't increase her defense because she knows she's going to lose it. Deals additional damage to all targets equal to 25% of max HP. Cleanse her own negative effects. That's not a really good one actually. I always say I don't like that one, because if you're already CC'd, that's not very good. Removing attack down and stuff like that is nice, but it would be nice if it was a proper cleanse. 50% chance to freeze 3 random targets for 1 round. Frozen targets will get their rage recovery speed reduced by 25% and will get 1 stack of Ice Mark. Each stack of Ice Mark reduces control free by 5%, the damage by 2%, the res by 3%, it can be stacked, it cannot be dispelled, and they will last until Yumi basically dies. For 1 round, when attacked by enemies with Ice Mark stacks, she recovers 70% of her lost HP. 7% of her lost HP, sorry, and reduces the damage taken by 15%. She cleanses the negative effects for 2 of your random frozen allies, and lets one of those 2 allies gain freezing immunity for 1 round. If there are enemies with 8 stacks of Ice Marks, deals absolute damage, absolute 0 degree to a random enemy. Execution. Ignore shields, damage limitations, and undying effects. Immediately deal damage equal to his current HP. This damage is not affected by any buffs or debuffs, and this effect can't be triggered for 2 rounds after it has been triggered. So essentially, once you have 8 stacks, she kills you. If you have a revive, you can revive. If you have Undyings, like say Ignis or Rob 14 or Dualon or whoever it is, you die. There's no coming back. You can have Ignis with 7 stacks of his Undying passive and he will just die. Boom, gone. This is the reason why people are so high on this character. Global, like Taiwan, is a defensive meta region, and global maybe even more so because we spend less money, which means offensive characters generally get more neglected than they get in other regions. What this means is that if you look at a lot of fights that people post, they go to 10 rounds and 12 rounds and 15 rounds, and this woman on average, according to Taiwan and Japan, normally gets to 9 to 8 stacks around round 7 to 9, but it can happen a lot sooner than that. I've seen it as soon as like round 3, I think that's the fastest I've seen it stacked. And once she gets that, that's one character that's going to get killed. That's an Undying gone. Whether it's if you have a revive, that's 1 revive gone. If you have Undyings, that's your character dead. And if you have revives, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm not entirely sure that you cleanse the marks when you die, because it says they last until Yumi leaves the field, so you might not even cleanse them when you revive. That's something to keep an eye on. She's obviously a really strong tank, right? She gets a lot of defensive buffs, very few of them related to defense because she knows she's going to sacrifice all her defense, but she gets so many res and anti-crit and block and ult res. She gets so many buffs to these stats to make up for the fact that she's going to give up her defense. She gets a ton of healing, and when you couple that with the fact that she has such high dodge for quite a long time, she is very, very, very durable. Even at her worst, right, once you get to like round 11, she's still going to ignore 3 out of every 10 attacks, 30% of all attacks, which is really strong for a tank. There's literally 0 damage from them. Couple that with the fact that she can do those crazy reflects with her Undyings. Couple that with the fact that she actually has like strong heals in several different places. And couple that with the fact that she has a lot of freezing CC. And the fact that she is continuously reducing people's control free as long as she's on the field. So even if you have people who have high control free, she is slowly chipping away at it as the match goes. Time by time by time by time by time. And in the end, these people are going to end up with low enough control free that she's going to be freezing them a lot, which is also not only a way to apply her ice marks, which again will lower the control free again, but it will lower the damage and it will make her take less damage and heal more health. But it's also damage mitigation because there's people that's not going to be acting, right? So it's kind of insane the kind of kit they gave her. And what you want to do with Yumi is put her inside of fucking Fort Knox and don't let anybody touch her. You want to protect her as much as possible. You want to make her basically unkillable, so that you get to that point where she's just going to be going every 2 rounds. Pop, you're dead. Pop, you're dead. Fuck you. Oh, you have 7 Undyings? It doesn't matter. Oh, you're Kyo? You have 5 Undyings? It doesn't matter. You're dead. That's such a crazy strong effect, right? that you really want to build your team around that. And this is the reason why I feel most people run Yumi and Asuka in Taiwan in top 10. Because you have Yumi as your stall character, and they run things like Yashiro Striker and Hotaru Striker, and they run defensive strikers to basically protect her. And then they normally run a character that has Intimidate, like say Yamazaki, to draw attacks away from her. And quite a few people even run her backline, so that she gets hit a lot less even. And then they just let Asuka go off on the people who aren't dying because they're immune to CC or because they're immune to freezing or whatever. She can go off and kill them through pure damage, while Yumi just goes after all the slower stall characters and slowly pops them like grapes one by one. Pop, 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 pop. Done. Right, so these two characters are very, very powerful. Hikage is also very powerful for a free unit, and these two characters are the reason why Homura basically doesn't get run. Because Homura costs diamonds, unlike Hikage, who is free, you're going to have to spend for her. And in a period of 2 months, if you want to Smax Asuka and Yumi, they're going to come twice. You're going to get 2 bandits, most likely. If you're very lucky, 3, but I think it's almost likely going to be 2. And you're going to get 2 chances at each of their weapons, which means in 2 months you have to get 2 characters and 4 weapons. If you add Homura to that, all of a sudden you have to spend another 20k on average just for the character, plus you need to spend for her weapons. Another 25k on each weapon is 50k, which is kinda crazy, right? So people focus Yumi and Asuka because of the costs involved and just ignore Homura for the most part, unless they're crazy whales, obviously. So in terms of runes, you're gonna want to run earth runes on her. Thorns obviously are ideal for when you're getting hit a lot, and the heal is still good, but the reflect part goes completely to waste with how much she's going to be dodging, right? So in that sense, Thorns lose some appeal. You can still run them for the heal if you really want to go in, but I personally think that boosting her res even further and reducing enemies' attacks when they attack is a better effect. The 6 rune effect, obviously, you don't really want to trigger, but the rest of the kit is a lot better. In terms of chips, this is probably going to be a first on this channel, which is funny for the last video I'm doing, but she's probably best with slugs. Mostly because you want as much healing on her as possible, right? So you can heal any extra damage that comes through that dodge. Python obviously works because 30% res or 20% res, whatever that buff is obviously very good. And Python obviously aren't ideal because she is a tank at the end of the day, which means her damage isn't going to be as high, so she can't take as much advantage of the HP drain from Scorpion. In terms of Fightsoul, you go defensive, right? So you want to run, I think, if you really want to go defensive on her, I think you probably go Guardian. I think a Wolf could work on her, because as long it's something that needs to be tested, because I know even if you dodge, you receive the effects of the attacks. So all that dodge does is reduce damage to 0, but you can still be paralyzed, for example, if it's Show Me Skill or Ionize and stuff like that, right? So if you can be hit by those effects, you should also be able to trigger the effects from stuff like Wolf Soul, which means it would be a very nice increase in stats for her, and it would be a good fit. Guardian is also obviously great because damage limitation on a character that has dodge and has really high defensive stats is amazing. Unyielding for the healing mostly, and for the res as rounds go on. So as she's losing dodge, she's gaining res through the Fightsoul. I think that's mostly where you want to look at her. I don't think you really want to run something like Lamb or like Wither or similar, even though she could use them decently. I think you really want to focus on something that is going to build her up further rather than utility, right? People talk about running Storm on her, and Storm on her is okay, but what you have to understand is that she has so much freeze already on the rest of her kit. You can freeze up to 6 people per round, so unless refreezing people gives extra ice marks. Storm isn't going to be doing that much, because what it's going to do is it's going to spread it to more people, but it's not going to stack it up faster, if you know what I mean, right? Because the people who aren't getting those stacks with the amount of CC that she gets are probably immune to freeze or something. But if you were to freeze someone with the passive and then freeze them with the ult, and that gave them an extra stack, then yes, Storm is also an option, and a good one actually. That's something that you will have to test and see. I don't even have the game installed anymore, so I'm not going to be able to do that for you. So yeah, that's Yumi for you. I think if you looked at all these kits, I think you'll understand why Asuka and Yumi are the most run characters of the two for the collaboration. And what you have to understand is that this collaboration is pretty greedy in terms of how many diamonds it wants you to spend. It also has some crazy rewards, but the crazy rewards are mostly going to be for the bigger whales. So all these characters, all the paid characters, Homura, Asuka, Yumi, are going to appear twice, and they will never appear again after after the collaboration. They shouldn't. Well, this is according to Taiwan, by the way. We don't know if Global is going to change it, but unless they do, there won't be any limited gift packs. There won't be any more reruns. There won't be any more weapons outside of these 2 months that we have of the event. So if you want to get this character and Smax them, you have to do it over the course of the next 8 weeks or so. That's a very heavy expenditure. There are some game modes where you can get weapon frags and similar stuff to that, which might make some of this cheaper. If you're first in one of them, which is like a PvP mode, you can get a full weapon, and apparently I've been told that rotates. There's 4 different seasons, and each season has a different weapon. But even if you can't get first, which gives you 5,000 diamonds and the weapon, the ranks all give you different amounts of frags. I don't know up to what point. I think up to top 20 for sure, but I don't know below that. And they give you diamonds, so that might mitigate the costs a little bit. But it doesn't change that this event is going to be incredibly expensive for you if you want to get them both. And if you can't get both, it is going to hurt. Like I said, Taiwan is just full of them. I'll link below the video that I made for the Discord the other day, just looking at different servers with the different with all the different top 10s, so they could see more or less what the meta looks like after there. That was like 2 days after Yumi Smax release, right? So some people might not even have it yet at that point. So yeah, that's pretty much all 4 of their characters. I thank all of you who have joined the channel and watched my videos up to this point. I pretty much did them for fun and to help people in the Discord. I never looked to really grow the channel. It was mostly just for information, because there was an incredible lack of it on the global server, sadly. Hopefully someone else can start posting, right? But that's it. That's the last video. Thank all of you. Have a good one. And I'll see you guys somewhere else. Take care of yourselves.